Hello and welcome, everyone. We are just kicking off at the top of the hour here. We're going to give a few moments for folks to join. I'm Jeff Richardson, Director of Product Marketing here at Kochava, and excited to have you all here today. Our very own Matt Goodrich is already in our chat as well, so say hello. Let us know where you're joining from. We got New York, LA. Awesome. And the chat, if you don't see, it's up in the upper right corner. You should be able to click on that. We've got some other docs and resources and Q&As over there as well. So we'll go through some opening housekeeping announcements here soon, and we'll meet our speakers as well in just a moment. But we always like to kind of give a little soft intro for folks to jump on first. So we're already a minute after, and we got a lot to cover those. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us formally off and get started. So again, for those of you that joined in the last few seconds, since I last introduced myself, I'm Jeff Richardson, Director of Product Marketing here at Kochava. Really excited for today's topic, Deep Linking 101. We're going to cover all the basics. Excited to kind of walk through that with three different team members. You'll notice that we all have J's at the start of our name. That wasn't really planned, but it just happened that way. So we'll meet the speakers here in just a moment. For those of you that aren't familiar with Kochava, we were one of the first mobile measurement partners, MMPs, all the way back in 2011, helping app marketers basically understand how their user acquisition and re-engagement efforts across all different platforms and channels were driving actual app growth. We do a lot more than just mobile today, connected TV, all the different channels and connected devices that have proliferated across the last 15 plus years. Deep linking is an integral part of the platform that we offer as well, and it plays a crucial role in campaign performance. And as we look to measure and attribute what those campaigns do, deep linking is a key factor in why a campaign might succeed or really struggle and maybe have conversion leaks that you're not aware of. So we're going to cover that and go through a lot of great detail today. And yeah, we've got folks on, LA, New York, San Francisco. Awesome. So yeah, Matt Goodrich on our team is in the chat. Say hello in there and let us know where you're joining from. And before we intro our speakers, now I want to just cover some quick announcements. So number one, we love your engagement. So up in that upper right corner, you'll see that we have our chat. There's a Q&A tab where you can submit questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. We will have a few polls. If you'd like to answer those, we love to kind of get your answer on those and see where you stand. Additionally, the webinar will be recorded. So this will be available on demand after the event today. So don't feel like you have to try and take screenshots or copious notes. Like, we will send this to you and you can watch on demand, pause, restart, all that kind of stuff. And then in the Docs tab, also kind of up and to the right there, we have a number of helpful resources on the topic of deep linking. So be sure to check that out. You can click and any of those will open on a different tab, and you can explore those after the webinar. And they will be available in the on-demand experience as well. So you'll be able to access them outside of the live event moment that we're in today. And lastly, there's a lot more on the topic of deep linking and all other things like attribution, app marketing. So follow us online. We're active across Facebook and Twitter/X, LinkedIn. So be sure to connect with us. Let's go ahead now and meet our speakers. And like I mentioned, we all have J's in front of our name. So I'm going to bring onto stage, Jordan is there. I want to bring on James and also Jacob. And then I'll have each of you introduce yourselves. So welcome. All right, well, let's have you go from left to right in the order on the slide and just say hello. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, excellent. Hi, my name is Jacob Manfred. I oversee client onboarding at Kochava. So I've been with the company for about 5 years. Overall, our team has worked with over 200 different accounts, from large enterprise to small scale startup, in terms of getting their deep linking strategy off the ground when they get started with Kochava. So excited to chat with you all today.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Jacob.
Nice. Hi, everyone. I'm James Benoit. I run sales engineering for Kochava. Been with the company quite a long time, joined in 2014, so I've seen a lot of evolution that has led us to where we are today, especially from a deep linking perspective, which is, of course, what we're going to be speaking about. But I help with a lot of the sort of pre-sales technical conversations around how these sorts of things are configured, what they're capable of doing. So I'm excited to get into the content with you all today.
Thanks, James.
Hi, I'm Jordan Shaver. I'm a senior client partnership manager here at Kochava. So I work in parallel with our customer success team on accounts. They're the technical experts. I'm the relationship and strategy expert on our Kochava client team. So really dive in with clients to talk about creative strategies in regards to how to use our tooling, better use our tools, and how to keep those users once you've acquired them.
Yeah. All the different facets from strategy to onboarding, technical implementation. I think we have the perfect split here. So, well, let's start with a poll. I just want to kind of see where the audience is at in terms of their understanding of deep linking. So I'm going to open a poll. You'll see a little pop up. You can go over to the polls tab and respond in there. And while that is baking for a moment, I'll just quickly touch base on kind of what we're going to cover over this next little, gosh, already less than an hour. So we're going to talk about just literally deep linking kind of TLDR, right? Just overview, 30,000 foot. And then we're going to talk about some different types of deep links, deep linking use cases. There's some incredible detail on best practices as you implement deep links. And then 6 kind of top deep linking pitfalls to avoid. So that'll be the hour ahead of us. And with that, let me go ahead and share the poll results. So we had the question was, how would you rate your understanding of deep linking? And we've got a good mix here. Hopefully all 3 of you, the J's here, think of yourself as a seasoned pro since you're on and talking. But yeah, we've got some total novice that's just here to learn basics. Some have heard the terms, but couldn't exactly explain the difference. Understand concepts, but haven't implemented much, and actively using deep linking, but want to sharpen my strategy. So that's a good spread. I'm gonna keep that open, and feel free to keep voting. And this is perfect because this is kind of what we want as we're trying to look through the content today. So let's go ahead and kick off with the deep linking kind of TLDR section. I'm going to close the poll and switch over to our slides here. So to kick off, what are deep links? And I'll just have you start from that 30,000 foot view. Don't go too deep.
Excellent. So deep links are what is pretty much industry-wide determined that it is the fastest path to user engagement with your app. Deep links bypass the standard app navigation, and they take users directly into the content that you're promoting from your advertising. If you run a retail business and you're promoting a very specific product through your advertisements, a deep link allows users to click on the ads, go directly to that product placement within your shopping page within your app. Same thing with any sort of publications, streaming services. If there's a specific content, article, news show that's been produced and you're looking to promote specifically that content, users can go directly there. And so it really helps users with a seamless journey, takes them in there directly without having to go through standard navigation, sign up steps, those types of things.
Yeah, so if you're like I guess all of us are consumers on mobile devices as well. So if you click an ad for a show on a streaming app and then you download, and then when you launch, that very same show that you clicked the ad for shows up ready to watch. Like, it's deep linking that makes that possible. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we're looking at, like, everybody's seen links in the wild, and deep linking obviously existed on just straight World Wide Web, the early internet, before it ever came to mobile. But I guess this visual here is just meant to, like, if you're looking at a link, how to know if it's a deep link versus just a standard link.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and Jeff, to your point, this is kind of where the term deep comes into the link part. On the no side here, we do have a lot of links to the entry-level navigation of your site. So if you're promoting content, this will take you to the very first layer. The deep links, as you can see, go once or multiple steps further, where they're taking users further down the navigation trail, helping them get there as quickly as possible. You can see the SKUs, specific video content IDs, or even specific product pages on a website instead of just sending them to the homepage.
Yeah, this would be like if we wanted to set, do an advertising campaign for our deep linking solutions, we wouldn't want to have the ad point to our homepage necessarily. We'd want to just take you right to our deep linking specific product page or solutions page or landing page. And I love this illustration. Marketing kind of put this together. I think it's like a perfect visual to convey, like if you don't use deep linking, the potential journey that you're forcing your user or your potential customer to take in order to reach the conversion goal, whatever your destination may be. So if you don't deep link them, right, and they see an ad for a shoe, but then you just drop them in the app and they have to then go find that shoe. Like, I saw it in the ad, where is it? The likelihood of them encountering friction that leads them to abandon their journey and just say, forget it, I can't find it, I'm not going to buy it, is not insignificant. And so the deep link kind of gives that easy path from advertisement to the actual thing you want them to do, the action you want them to take. So this is another helpful visual just to look at kind of the three flows. And maybe James or Jacob, like either one of you could maybe just talk through this as a visual.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, this is really kind of a depiction of what we've been describing thus far in terms of the different types of navigation experiences an end user can have. So in standard navigation, we've all done this as individuals. We all have phones. You tap on a call to action, you see something that's of interest, you route it to the app store, you download the app, you launch the app. Not necessarily a deep link experience. Is a deep link and deferred deep link experience. So we'll kind of get into the nuances of both, but the deep link experience is that of a call to action is shown, whether you're in an in-app experience or you're on the open web. You see something, you tap that deep link, you happen to have the app already installed. In Jeff's example with the shoe, it's an e-commerce, it's a promotion for a particular product. You have interest in that product, you tap, and you're deep linked directly into that product page within the app, skipping sort of all the manual navigation you might have to go through in terms of just landing on the app's homepage and searching for the product yourself. So really in terms of reducing friction is quite significant in terms of the efficiency of that customer journey and their experience engaging with your product. Deferred deep linking, which we'll get into in a little bit more depth, I believe, later in the presentation, are cases where you want to give that person a deep link experience, but they perhaps don't already have the app installed. And so their journey is they see the call to action, they're routed to the App Store or the Play Store to download that app. Upon launching that app for the first time, a deferred deep linking would be an experience where they're then launched. They give another way to put this is custom first time launch experience, but they download the app, they open the app. As they open the app resolves them to like that shoe product page, skipping the process of having to sort of manually navigate. So the name of the game with deep linking and really what's depicted here is streamlining that customer journey so you can get them to convert in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, I hear about the reducing friction is something I hear about a lot. One, and Jordan, like, as you work with clients, right, and they're looking to do a new campaign strategy, I know like part of that is just like, well, deep linking might take some extra time to implement. There are considerations beyond just the marketing team to properly implement it, but the performance impacts are well worth it. So maybe you could talk through just what an app marketer might expect to see from proper implementation of deep linking.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about it, we're a society of instant gratification. We want to do exactly what we want to do in that moment and get the result that we're looking for. So the impact of deep linking is just that. When you are engaged with your consumer and they've taken that initial action to go take that other action to purchase that cart, that shoe, whatever it may be, you are going to see that conversion downstream and your ROI is going to come from that. So it is important to think about, to Jeff's note, it takes multiple teams to get deep linking involved and live. And it's super important to think about that end result that you're looking for to be able to achieve that. So engaging with the teams long before you're implementing the links, build out that strategy to get that conversion and you will see that ROI.
Yeah. And the different ROI numbers in terms of performance boost will vary, whether, like if it's user acquisition campaign, right? It can be a little different if it's a re-engagement campaign or retargeting where you're engaging users you already have, right? To get them back into the app, right? The deep linking path is even less frictionless because the app's already on their device. They can immediately open right into the app in the moment versus the deferred deep link scenario where they still go through the app store and install before the first launch experience. And then, yeah, I mean, overall we have the session duration stat here, but if you think of lifetime value, retention, like overall deep linked users, they just behave differently because you've given them a friction-free, personalized experience. So the different like impacts you'll see will probably be similar to this, but will vary based on use case. So let's go ahead and let's shift gears to types of deep links. And this also is types of almost the implementation of deep links too. So James, you mentioned, obviously like you're often involved in very technical conversations, being involved in sales engineering. So can you walk us through kind of these 4 pillars here?
Yeah, for sure. So what's represented here, I think I could really talk about this in 3 buckets rather than 4, because universal links and app links are sort of in the same category, if you will, from a technical perspective and how they work. But starting from left to right, custom URI schemes, this is what you may refer to as like a traditional deep link, where it's a URI, what you see there in the example, your app : / path. So like a traditional URI, a deep link where user taps on a call to action, and the routing of that user is actually handled in a browser, which gets a little bit into the technical weeds there, but this is really not, it still works, but it's not often used, because when this method of deep linking is put in use by a marketer or an app development team, the user is generally going to be shown prompts like, are you sure you want to open this link? Those sorts of things. It really, they just add steps to the customer experience, and, it still works, but it's a little bit clunky and kind of used to be the way things work. But with changes made to the OSs, which have led to universal links and app links, that experience has been a lot more streamlined. Third-party attribution redirects, this really has more to do with paid media. So as you're running with ad networks and DSPs, placing a click tracker behind your media, as you would if you're leveraging an MMP to measure your campaigns. This is where the click is being handled. The redirect is being handled by Kochava, and the user can be redirected to a deep link destination. The third category, really, app links and universal links. This is app links being specific to Android, universal links being specific to iOS. This has been in place for several years now, and is really now the gold standard of how deep linking is facilitated by devices, by platforms, by apps, looking to give users the best possible experience. And the technical difference between the first one, the custom URI schemes, and universal links and app links, are that universal links and app links are actually handled by the OS, which really just means when a user taps on a call to action, it's a much more streamlined experience. They're not shown any modals or prompts asking them if they're sure they want to resolve to that deep link destination. Because of the way this works technically, you tap on a call to action and you're sent directly into this specific page within the application that you're looking for, that's perhaps related to the call to action. So when you're thinking about implementing deep linking in this day and age, you're really talking about implementing app links and universal links.
Yeah. And it's and OS, by the way, just for clarity, is operating system, right? So it's the device operating system that handles the actual routing, as opposed to the web through a browser of sorts as a redirect. So, and yeah, I think, and at the bottom here, there's these kind of small notes here, but in some cases, the big self-attributing networks, sometimes also called self-reporting networks, this is the likes of Google Ads and other big super pubs. In some cases, they will require for certain campaign types that you use either app links or universal links. So it's something, as you look at your media mix across your paid partners, right, to understand, if you don't have this implemented yet, right, it may be a prerequisite for certain things. And I see a great question just came in the chat, actually, from Khalid. Which one is used in the product catalog feed in the case of web, iOS, and Android feed? I don't know if that's something you want to try and I'll try and get it moved over to questions in the Q&A here so I can pop it up on screen. But I don't know if you want to. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Matt. Matt just sent it over to Q&A. So I'll try and quickly boost this onto screen here so we can have it up and you can read it here. A second here. So any thoughts on this one, James?
Yeah, but far and away, universal links and app links are what are used in this context. And really, when you're thinking about implementing deep linking, like that is now the standard technical way that deep linking is facilitated. And so, in our experience here at Kochava, many of our customers are doing just this, where they're looking to deep link users from a web experience into iOS or Android, and they're absolutely using app links and universal links to achieve that seamless user experience that everyone is after.
Yeah. Great question, Khalid. And if anybody else has questions, feel free to submit them, and we'll try to cover those as they come in. The interesting thing too to think about is, I kind of like Kochava really sits in that third-party attribution redirect bucket, but in that process, we support the boxes to the box to the left and the boxes to the right, in the sense of like within the tracking tag system that is within Kochava's campaign manager, right? You can implement custom URI scheme deep links, but you can also fully implement app links and universal links. And we're obviously staying kind of fairly confined to just mobile and Android, iOS here. There are link considerations for other mobile platforms like Huawei, for things like connected TV platforms. We won't cover that full scope today, but if you have questions about other device types and other operating systems, click that request huddle up at the top. And if you have a kind of a use case that's more of a corner case that we're not hitting on today, we'll be happy to kind of dive deep with you on some of those other things. So let's go ahead and shift gears into deep linking use cases. And I want to launch another poll as we embark on this one, just to understand like current deep linking setup. So I've opened this poll. The question is, which of these best describes your current deep linking setup? And so maybe you're not using it at all right now. Maybe you're using it at scale across a ton of campaigns. So go ahead and vote on that, and we will surface those results here soon and see kind of where folks stand. But I wanted to start off just, as we dive into some of these, Smart Links is a kind of really the deep linking suite of Kochava. And so a lot of the use cases that we're going to talk through and highlight, it's not every use case. There's no way to go through all of them, but it's because of kind of where Kochava sits in the marketing tech stack of lots of different brands across different verticals. And again, the goal at the end of the day is connecting a user or a maybe future user for an app to the right destination based on whatever experience they're having. It could be scanning a QR code on a tabletop stand-up. It could be clicking an ad on mobile device. It could be lots of different experiences and different touch points. But the goal is to make sure that the connection from call to action to conversion is seamless. So let me go ahead and share the results of our poll here. So it looks like we've got, so far, we don't have anybody that isn't using deep linking yet. So we have a mix of folks that are kind of basic static deep links only, and we'll get into kind of the difference there in a moment. Universal and app links, some implementation there. Dynamic to good. Okay, a good mix. And it's okay if you're not sure, like depending on where you sit within an app marketing team or beyond that, deep link can sometimes be kind of hidden under the hood, if you will, and not fully obvious. So we will talk through a lot of these great use cases here. I'll keep this poll open, and if you haven't responded yet, feel free to go ahead and respond. Let me go back to our first use case slide here, because at this point I want you to talk through deferred deep linking. Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. So deferred deep linking, and James touched on this a little bit, is specifically when the call to action is twofold. When you need the user to, number one, engage with your app, and then number two, find the results of what was being promoted. So as you can see here, there's two different kind of deep link paths being shown here. Number one is the first thing they're doing is they're clicking on the ad. If the app is installed, the user's going directly to your product. That is a traditional deep link or deep link that uses universal app links. They're being sent in directly. Very, very little points of friction there. On the bottom there, that is an example of what we have as a deferred deep link, where there is a point of friction in that the call to action on your ad is based on app engagement for an app that the user does not have already. And so the very first thing is throwing up this kind of primary call to action, which is number one, we need you to get our app. And so the user, when they click on the ad, there's no app installed. They're sent to the App Store, asked to download the app. If they complete that, they will launch the app and have that personalized user experience where they're taken directly into the page for the app they're promoting. And so you can basically accomplish 2 acquisition goals at once. You can get the user to both download the app and straight to the product page that you're looking to promote. The key tool in this is Kochava's attribution engine, where we are actually matching that app install back to the ad where the user was initially exposed to pull in the results of what deep link they need to be sent to and where they need to go to. So that whole process is based in Kochava's attribution model, and how you're able to perform kind of the deferred portion of deferred deep linking. Otherwise, if the user just went to the App Store and installed the app, they would just be sent to the homepage like anyone else. The real added value there is knowing what ad was clicked on prior to that app install.
Yeah. And I was thinking that like a great use case would be like a coupon ID or an offer ID, right? And re-engagement is an interesting use case because typically with a re-engagement campaign, the notion is that the user has the app installed already. Sometimes, from the time you build that audience segment to actually campaign go live and reach the user, there's a chance they might have uninstalled your app, right?
Absolutely.
And so even on a re-engagement campaign, there's some settings in our platform, right, where you can still select install as an attributable conversion event to cover that corner case. But suppose you have an offer ID for like, hey, come back, and they maybe their lapsed 7-day purchase, right? They haven't done anything in 7 days. So you have some special offer ID. Well, the person who still has the app, they might click that, the offer ID passes through, and it immediately greets them with that discount to apply at checkout. But if the user doesn't have the app and you don't have deferred deep linking, that offer ID, right, that may not make it fully through. And so they want to engage, but the dots don't connect and they can't get their discount at checkout, so they abandon cart. Deferred deep linking, when it works properly end to end, that would allow that full journey, even in the case where they have to go and install the app again, to fully connect from start to finish. And like you said, yeah, attribution is a dependency in the background, but there's another version of this like diagram that is far more detailed, showing all the behind the scenes aspects involved, which would be too much to put on for the webinar today. But if that's something like, if this is a use case that is important to you and you want to do a deep dive, let us know, get in touch, and we can go through that.
Jeff, sorry, before we jump on, one other example that I'd just like to throw out there too is anything to do with referral codes. Just because any of those customers that are looking to refer a friend or anything like that, that's a perfect use case of deferred deep linking, because typically the person who's receiving the link to download would not have the app installed already. And so you're providing them with a personalized user experience that would benefit both them and their friend. And 9 times out of 10, that user would not have the app installed yet.
Yep. No, it's a great use case. Now, so next one would be, this one is one of my favorites. I know it's one of your favorites, James, because I think you probably talked through this like 100 times. Maybe 1,000 times or more.
Potentially,
yeah. But so the notion of dynamic macro replacement. So I'll handle kind of the steps here, but just walk us through what this is and why it's important from a scalability perspective.
Yeah, just to set the table on this and what this is and why this is important is, we've supported tons and tons of customers who, I think the e-commerce use case is the easiest to get your head around, but really think of any app that has lots of content, hundreds or thousands of product pages or lots and lots of different articles, places a user could potentially go within the app. A lot of times marketers find it daunting, the prospect of managing all of the deep links, all of the tracking links associated with all of the distinct places within their app. They find it a bit daunting because you're in a position of managing hundreds, potentially thousands of links. At least that's the mindset when they get into this. Dynamic macro replacement is very related to what Jacob was just talking about in terms of giving folks, and it's really the theme of this whole webinar, is giving folks the correct experience when they engage with a call to action that is going to deep link them into the app experience. Dynamic macro replacement is really a mechanism that we employ at Kochava to allow for a single really deep link or a single tracking link to potentially drop users into any number of places inside of the app. So if you think about it from an e-commerce perspective, you have thousands or tens of thousands of products inside of an app. You have offers all over the place where you're promoting those different products, and you want to make sure users are sent to the correct place in the app without yourself having to manage, a one-to-one relationship between the product that you're promoting and the link that's actually going to send the user there. So this flow that we're about to go through sort of defines how that can be configured to where you have a single really deep link tracking URL that can send users to any particular place. So you can see in the example there in the deep link template, you have, a generic sort of your app : / product view with a macro of product ID. And for anyone that's not familiar, when we use the term macro, the other way to define that is it's a placeholder. It's a macro placeholder, as you can see. So that product ID in curly braces, when a user engages, that will be replaced with whatever that product ID is, a numeric string, a code, a SKU that represents that product. So as you append a product ID to your deep link and you traffic that tracking link, and can see in the tracking link, you have product ID equals, and then the placeholder value. Upon click, depending on where that link is trafficked, that placeholder can be replaced with the actual value. And then as Kochava, as far as the way our platform works, handles resolving the user to the deep link destination, we can actually dynamically append that unique SKU or that unique product ID into the deep link you've associated with the tracker. And so this is just a strategy in configuring deep linking that, like I said, it really cuts down on the operational overhead of managing potentially tons and tons of different links, allowing you to use a single tracking link that can send users to any particular place inside of your app. In this example, it's a product ID, so you're sending the person to that specific shoe that they found interest in that led them to click or tap on that call to action. So it's a really, really effective strategy, something we recommend everyone kind of looks into, especially in cases, which is more often the case than not, where there's lots and lots of different places in the app that they're potentially looking to deep link users into. The strategy really cuts down and streamlines the kind of operational overhead of configuring all of this and managing it on a go forward basis.
Yeah. And it's really that, one template, essentially infinite destinations. And like you said, like this interchange product ID, it could be show ID, episode ID, story or article ID. Yeah. And you could have more than one of these macro parameters, right, involved. So it's not necessarily limited. You could have an offer ID plus a product ID. So and so if you have a use case like that where you are in e-commerce or you're in some situation where you have dynamic product ads, or you've got thousands of different computations that you're trying to support, dynamic macro usage, and that is your friend. So if that fits you somehow and you want to explore that further, understand that, implement it, if you're managing hundreds, maybe thousands of links today, get in touch, and that's something that's a headache we can help solve. The next one, Jordan, maybe you could talk through like QR codes. I know they're still popular. They really exploded during COVID, I think, in 2020 and 21. But there's everywhere I go now. I mean, you see them. So can you give us a quick backdrop on that as a use case?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I can name one client who doesn't use our QR codes and linking in that solution, but we have supported many clients do many different marketing initiatives. And I think it's important to note that putting a link out there is never going to hurt where your marketing dollars are spent. You're just going to only understand better where those users are engaging with your marketing dollars, and then also acquiring them potentially for the first time as well. A couple fun ones that we've done. One of our large QSR customers has a QR code on every table, paper material that are in their in-store locations. Another fun that we did was a large-scale sporting event. They had QR codes all over their media activations on site at the stadiums. That was really fun. They also got to really understand how users were engaging within the event itself. And then lastly, another fun one is we have a credit card company who actually, with every activation that they send like a new card or a replacement card, that's a Kochava QR code as well. Understanding that SmartLink user, right, they're going in, activating the card, or they've replaced that card. So honestly, anywhere that you think that it would be helpful and or creative, it's definitely worthwhile to explore the options and what's available, because the options are limitless at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny with QR codes. I think there's a lot of different platforms out there. I know one of the biggest things is when you commit to a large scale print effort, right? So maybe you're printing new signage for thousands of stores, or a huge mailing, like there's those type of scenarios. And obviously, once a QR code is printed, like the link is within the QR code itself. So it's like there's been those moments like, oh no, we have to reprint. But one of the things with, like, at least for the SmartLinks QR code platform, like the link itself is just the front entry, right? Behind that, there's a bunch of architecture where you can change destinations. You can set up filtering by maybe geography, by device type or operating system, fallbacks, right? For if someone doesn't scan from maybe a certain type of device, you can just set a generic landing page. So it prevents, I guess, that moment of we just printed 10,000, signs or something, and we have the wrong destination. You can change it in the background. But is there any other best practices, like when you think about a client coming to probably your team, right, Jordan, where they're like, hey, we're about to do this big rollout, and anything we should watch out for, help us plan this? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Talk to your customer success manager before launching any links. They will QA those links, ensure that they're working properly before you have a large scale launch. I feel like that's one of the most interesting, or like maybe not thought about, is like how those links actually work out in the wild. Definitely get those tested, reach out to your support team. Another thing to think about is around that large scale activation. One I wanted to note was we actually do, if you ever do like a CTV home takeover, those are really fun as well, and maybe not thought about, but wherever you think that you could put a QR code, you most likely can. So yeah, reach out to in the Kochava ecosystem, your CP manager, but definitely you want to engage thoughtfully, and there is a plethora of people behind the scenes who are there and have done these kind of scaled activations, and that we can have some insights to help make sure it's seamless for your team.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And then I think there's not going into full marquee detail in these last ones, but there's some other just like use cases we could quickly rattle off. And the first one, Jacob, I'd love you to touch on this. This is something I really kind of wasn't aware of until recently, but the Google One Box SERPs, like, can you just talk through that real fast?
Absolutely. So this was a customer, large streaming customer, who came to us a couple of years ago with their implementation. And one of their areas that their team was lacking visibility into was installs of the app that were coming from Google One Box, which was something that I particularly had never heard of as a product term. But then once it was explained to me, it was pretty clear what it was. So when you're searching for any sort of sporting event, game, anything like that, Google has these search results that promote different apps on mobile where you can watch it. And this is a service that anyone can apply to get their app listed on here if they carry specific content. And within there, they can control what links the user is clicking on to go to these pages. And so this particular customer really wanted to make sure that their users were being sent into the app and not specifically just to a web page from Google. And so we replaced all of their One Box links with Kochava Smart Links. That it was one single link that uses a game ID as a replaceable macro, just like James was covering a couple topics ago. Mm-hmm. And so overall implementation relatively quick, because even though we have about 300 games, 300 days worth of games times 32 teams a season, there's a ton of different game IDs, but instead of having to create thousands and thousands of different links for the one box results, we were able to do it all just with a single URL and a game ID for each one of those results. And they also have visibility into the app installs, and their users were being pushed into the app instead of the web content. So overall, just a huge boost of engagement for that customer.
No, that's a cool use case. If that's something that like, like you said, it's not just the sports vertical, like there's lots of use cases for Google One Box, having results where to watch, right? Is especially like, so that could be maybe even like, obviously sporting events, maybe special like award shows, like all sorts of things like that. So if that is something you haven't explored yet, and you want like insight into what new user acquisition is potentially coming from these types of organic one box or search engine results pages, SERPs, get in touch, and that's something that we can help you look into. I'll rattle through these other ones real quick so we can jump forward to some implementation best practices. I think one thing to consider if you have never done so, Apple in their App Store has custom product pages, CPPs, where you can create variations of your standard product page that are much more specifically tailored to, a certain customer persona. So if that's something like, suppose you're like a personalization app where you allow people to create products for weddings and special occasions and stuff like that, and you want to do a campaign very specifically toward graduation, right? Well, you could have a custom product page that is very much graduate focused in that time of year, and you would send them there off of an ad rather than to just your generic product page where you're trying to kind of give the broad overview of what your app offers. In the Google Play Store, it's custom store listings. So those are great use cases. Like you can use those essentially as deep links to your normal product page that are nuanced and slightly different and more personalized than the standard static pages. And then there's obviously other application environments like smart banners, so SMS or text campaigns, right? You can put smart links with deep links in those, even push notifications, right? So really the use cases are endless. There's no way we can cover them all here, but if you have a use case that we haven't touched on or you're curious about, get in touch and we can help walk through that with you. I want to quickly, before we get to some pitfalls, I'm going to talk through just some implementation best practices. So if, I think we ended up having a couple folks in that last poll that did say that they haven't implemented deep linking yet. They're not using it. So this will be great for you. And again, this will be available on demand if you want the slides as well, and you need to take this back to your team and your organization, reach out and we can send them to you. One of the biggest aspects, I'll start with this, and then I'll hand off, I think, to you, James, for a couple of these, and then you as well, Jacob, would be that your product manager for your app, as well as app developers, are going to be key friends and collaborators in the implementation of your deep linking strategy. They will handle a lot of the schema mapping, the pathing involved. If they are going to implement universal links, app links, right, there are app association files and developer dependencies. So make them your friends and have close communication with them, and make sure your voice is heard on like what you need to support marketing efforts. So be an active participant in the planning of what that rollout's going to look like. So maybe, James, do you want to talk through the next few ones of these, and we can kind of rip through them pretty quick since I know there's a number of them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we say prioritize universal link and Android app link integration, really, when you're onboarding with a provider like Kochava, this is the path we will guide you down. This is really the gold standard of how deep linking works, and really the consumer expectation of the experience they're going to have if they tap on something that should deep link them. This is really going to give your consumers, your customers, the best possible experience. So it's kind of the price of entry. If you're implementing deep linking in this day and age, this is the strategy you will be using. And it does require the SDK integration. So, when you're integrating an SDK, obviously there's a lot of dependencies, like Jeff said. It's very, that first point is you can't overstate that enough. It's a team effort, product managers, app developers, marketers who are going to be the day-to-day practitioners using these things. All of what we've been describing here depends upon the integration of the SDK to properly resolve and measure users who are engaging with calls to action or deep linking folks into places inside of your app. And then, links API. So this one is kind of an interesting one. This is really a consideration. It's not sort of something everyone's required to use, but when you think about a scaled organization that has lots and lots of marketing initiatives, and a lot of those were enumerated on the previous slide. You have owned media like SMS and push and potentially email, and then you have paid media that's deep linking users into places in the app. The management of those links can be quite a significant undertaking for a marketing team, depending on the strategies they're using. We actually publish a links API so that all of this can be done programmatically. So of course, there's a dashboard, an interface where you can go in and configure these things as you would expect with sort of a SaaS tool. But to the extent that you need programmatic access to be able to manage these links from the application itself, so spawning links from the client application itself or server side, this is something to consider as a feature that exists that a lot of folks may not use at the outset, but it's something they could potentially grow into depending on their needs organizationally and technically as they manage a deep linking strategy.
Yeah, for sure. Jacob, do you want to talk through a few of these final ones here?
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding configurable attribution dependencies. So a lot of this will tie back into the deferred deep linking or your reporting output of what you're getting from the smart links that you're deploying. So Kochava has several different levers that you can pull to adjust look back windows, which is the duration between the click and then the call to action. For example, if you're using that referral code, you really only want that valid for about 7 days. That's something that's completely adjustable within Kochava using your look back windows. Then kind of the next one is using custom parameters and macros for scalability. So we talked about that with dynamic macro replacement is, considering whether or not you want to go the route of generating several links per campaign or just one link with some macros that are dynamically replaced based on the placements that you're using. Single platform links versus multi-platform links. This is one we haven't really touched on, but Kochava Smart Links in particular have a capability to be platform agnostic, meaning they will detect whether the user is clicking from an Android device, an iOS device, or on web. For each of those platforms, the user experience is going to be different. On iOS, they might go to the App Store. They might be deep linked into the iOS app. On Android, they might be sent to the Play Store. And on web, they're going to a website. Smart Links have that capability to be platform agnostic and send users to any one of those destinations using a single URL. If you really just want to promote users going straight to your website or anything like that, that would be an instance where we'd use a single platform link and deep link them into a subscription page or anything they might need to use or anything that you might need to activate on web. And then the last one, this kind of jumps back up to number 4, our links API for scalable management. Kochava has recently launched a agentic AI platform called Station One. And so this allows you to use any of your enterprise AI capabilities to create, manage, and distribute links through the Station One product. And so it's something that's pretty new, pretty cutting edge within the industry.
Yeah, and there's a lot of just from a reporting standpoint too. You think about all the different, like we talked about, the macros that might go into your links. There's obviously all sorts of different parameters too, like campaign ID, partner ID, ad group ID, right? That might be involved. All of that at the end of the day rolls up into reporting and analytics, and is available for you to dissect, if you will, and understand like, hey, what deep linking strategies are working well, right? Which aren't, and analyze reporting. If you see a campaign that is not performing as expected, check the deep linking, make sure it's working properly. The title of the webinar, right? Plugging conversion leaks. If the conversion rate's in the tank, really low, there could be something wrong, and hopefully you've tested that before launch, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But and I think within Station One as well, all of your data is queryable as well, so you can interact conversationally and ask questions about the attribution, about the links involved, about what parameters are in the data or the match request, right? So there's a ton of capability there. And you can use any model of your choice to plug in with that to interact with the platform, and then connect and authenticate with your Kochava account through our Kochava MCP. So if you have questions about that, that's a whole other topic that we could jump into that I won't try and dive into right now. Let's cover the deep linking pitfalls, right? We'll close. This is a high note, but we're going to close with caution, right? With things to watch out for. And some of it's redundant, if you will, almost like the inverse of best practices or stuff we've already talked about, but it's still helpful, something to think about. So let's jump through these. And James, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I do. So this really gets into, so, assuming everyone that's joined the webinar today has an app, that's why you're interested in deep linking. When we say, the pitfall is treating deep linking as a one-time setup, there are aspects of deep linking that are a one-time setup in terms of configuring like your Kochava smart links to route users properly, potentially use deferred deep linking or dynamic deep linking. What we're referring to here really is that as your team pushes updates to your application, throughout the, once a quarter or throughout the year, however often you're pushing updates to your app, it's really, really important to keep in mind that changes to the app's architecture, the way that routing is set up, is consistent with the way that you've configured your measurement. And so understanding that deep linking is dependent upon the way that the app is built and the way that it's designed to route users really has a direct impact on, a platform like Kochava's capacity to support your deep linking strategies. So don't treat it like a one-time setup. When app updates are pushed, this is something that ought to be QA'd and tested to ensure that there's no breaking changes to the way that you've set up your deep linking strategy with a partner like Kochava.
Yeah, really important one. Jacob, you want to hit number 2 for us here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is in line with what James was just discussing, is making sure that you're constantly evolving your deep linking strategy and working closely with all teams, because deep linking is not only a marketing tool, it's also a navigation tool, which means inherently your development team and the design of the app is consistently involved. And so keys change and things like that. Those are all things that can break an otherwise pretty fragile relationship, especially in the world of universal links. And so making sure that you're consistently staying up to date with product changes within your app, updates, changes within the industry, very, very important.
Yeah. And I think let's have you just roll right into number 3.
So creating smart links and not planning for scale. So creating one smart link for each referral could end you up with tens of thousands of links, which then becomes very, very difficult to manage and especially hard to govern. So one thing that you can really take in consideration here is that use of dynamic macro replacement, using smart links instead of single platform links to make sure that there's just one call to action instead of 3 based on the user or the user's platform that they're on. All things that you can consider in these strategies.
Yeah. James, how about potentially, you talked earlier on the link types, and there's different use cases where they may or may not work. Do you want to cover that one?
Yeah, this really gets into the type of media that you're running. So, largely speaking, there are, the 2 overarching categories are paid media and owned media. And there's different types of tracking links that you would use in each case, and especially, depending on the platform. So Jeff mentioned earlier, SANs and SRNs, your major platforms like Meta, Google, TikTok, Snap, platforms like that. There will be a different implementation approach with platforms like that when you're running like app install campaigns, for example, that don't necessarily employ third-party tracking URLs. Whereas with like an owned media where you're thinking about like SMS, push, calls to action on your own website, email, that's sort of a different type of implementation. And so, leaning on your customer success team, especially at Kochava, everyone's an expert in how to do this. It's very common that a customer will come to us with a use case and say, hey, what's the strategy I ought to employ here? And we can really give you that upfront guidance to make sure that the way that you deploy measurement, the way that you deploy your links based on your particular use case, whether it's QR, like Jordan was talking about, printing things on physical media versus digital calls to action versus paid media with a major platform, those can look very different from an implementation perspective. Like there's a lot of consistencies, but it's very important that you get the details right so that your end users have the correct experience when they engage with your media.
Yeah. And there was a great question that had come into actually during registration about specifically with social apps, right? And oftentimes with owned media where you're posting in comments, right? And there are some edge cases there to consider. Oftentimes some of the social apps have their own built-in browser as opposed to routing out to an external browser for redirect. So in certain cases, those edge cases have been solved for. In other cases, there's new edge cases that evolve all the time. So if you're doing a lot of linking through social platforms, particularly on an owned media basis, as opposed to like their official paid ad products, touch base and those types of things can be investigated, and we have some best practices you can follow as you do those types of scenarios and applications. Let's see, number 5, James, you want to handle this one, and then Jordan, we'll have you do number 6.
Yeah, definitely. So this one could probably be a webinar in and of itself. But the attribution setup associated with your linking, meaning the way that you're configuring attribution to take place against like a Kochava smart that you put out there in the wild, has a lot of dependencies, especially when it comes to deferred deep linking. So deferred deep linking, as Jacob mentioned earlier, a dependency there is that in order for a user to be resolved to a custom first-time launch experience, so they don't have the app, they go install it, they launch it, you want to send them to a particular place. That particular flow requires that there is device level attribution available so that, you know, your MMP like Kochava knows which deep link URI to hand off to the app to resolve the user to the correct place. This is a kind of an iOS specific dependency, but whether or not your app shows the ATT prompt, which is the app tracking transparency prompt, we've all seen it. If you have an iPhone, you know, do you want to allow this app to track? Users can agree or decline. That governs really the type of attribution that can take place. And there's also dependencies on whether that is associated with owned media or paid media and whether you allow probabilistic fallbacks. So keep in mind, you know, it's a pitfall, but we state it as a pitfall, but really something to keep in mind because this can be mitigated through the correct configuration is that, you know, you want to allow for probabilistic fallbacks in certain cases, especially with owned media, so that you have the maximum number of users where you get device level attribution and can give them the correct linking experience. And there's other configurations that kind of get deeper into the weeds there around allowing, you know, your owned media to have equal footing in the waterfall as your paid media. And it really gets into how matching is actually taking place. But regardless of the use case, you know, at least at Kochava, we have configuration strategies and approaches that can allow you to make sure that you have the maximum possible sort of pass through and fidelity in terms of the end user experiences that you're facilitating.
Yeah, well, that's really important. And number 6, Jordan.
Yeah, as you've heard from James and Jacob, there are a lot of things that can go wrong when you're linking, and we want to ensure that you guys don't have that experience, and your consumers or your customers don't have that experience as well. So skipping these proper planning, testing, and troubleshooting is super important. Understanding that there's, you know, things could be invisible until you see that performance drop off, or you don't see the expected outcome, or you launch and you're getting feedback that this link didn't work properly from, you know, someone else within your team. Super important. You want to QA those links, make sure everything is good to go before you launch. And so understanding what your launch dates are, working backwards is a very, you know, simple way that is consistently overlooked on the marketer side. And so it's super important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well, we got through a lot in a relatively short time, and there's still so much we could have covered. But yeah, so if you still have questions, if you have a scenario or a use case that we didn't cover today and you want to talk through it, feel free to click that request huddle button up there at the top of the screen. And yeah, Jordan, James, Jacob, thank you for bringing the 4 J's together for this event and all your expertise from the front lines of all things app marketing. And we are literally going to end pretty much right on time. So, and yes, Brennan just posted a question. Yes, the webinar will be available later within about an hour from now, maybe 90 minutes max. If you click the link from the reminder emails, you'll be able to watch the on-demand session and click all the links and check out all of the related content that we've provided. So thank you to everyone, and have a great rest of your day or evening if you're somewhere else in the world. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.